Hey guys, I'm Bethany and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I make faith and lifestyle content. I'm 23, I live in Alabama with my husband and our 2 dogs. I'm so happy that you're here and I'm so excited about today's video because today we are going to be talking about books. I'm so excited because I haven't done like a book video in a while. It's because I've been in quite a book slump for pretty much the entirety of March and then most of April. But in May, I read a good amount of books and I wanted to talk about them with you. So obviously I am doing a May reading wrap up. I'm so excited to tell you about the books that I read in May. I love watching these. They're so much fun to see what people read, what they thought of the books, and it gives me inspiration on what to read. Also, before we get into it, I did film a June reset routine and then I didn't like how it turned out and decided not to post it. And then this past weekend was actually Memorial Day weekend, so I spent a lot of time with family and didn't end up getting a video up on Tuesday, which is the day I'm filming this. So this video is going up on Wednesday, but I normally do post on Tuesdays. So I'm sorry about that, but I really want to post videos that I'm proud of and I was just not necessarily happy with that one. So I decided to film this one today for tomorrow, and I have another video I'm working on, but it's gonna take more days to finish it. But anyways, I think that's all my rambling. Thank you for being here. Also, I made a book Instagram, so if you like the book content, you should follow me at Books with Bethany C. Post book content over there. I will do like a little mini reading wrap up on that Instagram, but I'm excited to dive deeper in this video. So first, I wanted to do a little recap of the book that I read in April. I literally read one book. I talked about it in one of my vlogs, but I wanted to add it to this video because I want all my book reviews to be in one place so it's easier for you. So in April, I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and it was incredible. Honestly, I've been putting off reading it for a while because I was scared. I've heard just that it's very heavy, very heart-wrenching, and it was. But by the end of it, I loved it so much. So basically, it's about this girl named Lily. She graduated college and moved to Boston and started her own business. She meets this guy named Ryle. You just kind of see what happens in her business, in that relationship, and then it also takes you back to her childhood with her first love. His name is Atlas. What kind of happened there, and then she actually reunites with Atlas, and you just kind of see that unfold. I do have to say a big trigger warning to this book. Like, if you want to read this book, I highly suggest reading trigger warnings because I obviously am not going to tell you the trigger warnings because I don't want to read the book for you, but I highly suggest reading them before you start the book because I knew what the trigger warnings were before I went to the book, and that's why I didn't want to read it. But I do think some people, it might not affect them, but some people it might affect them a lot. So I would just check the trigger warnings. I did rate it 5 stars because I loved it so much. And honestly, I feel like I learned so much from that book. I still think about it and just some of the premises and principles in that book that can be used in other circumstances. I've read quite a few of Colleen Hoover's books and I definitely think this one's the heaviest. So do with that what you will. Obviously, if you're going into a Colleen Hoover book, you know it's probably going to be a little heavy, but this one specifically was heavier than any of the other ones I've read. Honestly, it was very hard to get through because of the trigger warnings and just some of the stuff that happens. But by the end of the book, I was so invested in the main character. And if you don't know, there's actually a sequel coming out called It Starts With Us. And I'm so excited. I think that one's gonna be less heavy and I'm very excited to read it. But I just feel like this book is such a necessary story that needs to be told. I feel like people in this situation that Lily is in, I think it would be helpful for them to read a story like this. And I feel like it really kind of showed me how not everything is black and white. I feel like there is gray area in things. And when you're outside of a situation, you look in and you're like, oh, this is what I would do. I can't believe they're doing this. But you genuinely don't know because you're not in that situation. I think this book just opened my eyes to that. I feel like I just learned a lot from it, honestly. And I loved at the end, Colleen Hoover talked about kind of why she wrote this book and what happened in her life to write the book. And honestly, before I read that, I was pretty sure that something similar had to have happened to Colleen Hoover because of how she wrote it. She seemed to really know what emotions the character was feeling. Anyways, that's my spiel on It Ends With Us. If you watched my blog, you already heard it, but I wanted to add it to this video. So 5 stars, I highly suggest reading it, but please check the trigger warnings. But now we are going to get into the books that I read in May. I read 4 books and I've been in the middle of quite a few and I just haven't finished them yet. So I'm obviously not putting them in this video. Also, by the way, most of these books I don't have a physical copy of because I borrowed them from the library and I've already returned them. So I can't show you a physical copy except one of them that I actually own. The first one is If It's Perfect by Summer Dowell, and this was a very short, like rom-com type vibe. Like if that's the vibe you're looking for, if you're wanting a book that you can get through pretty quickly and is going to make you feel good, that's gonna just kind of have lighthearted romance vibes, I recommend this book because it's the complete opposite of It Ends With Us. It's not heavy, and I really enjoyed it. So basically it's about this girl named Hope. She owns this cake business, and at one of the weddings she is at for the cake, she meets this guy, and you kind of can see what happens. There's kind of like a plot twist at the beginning of the book, which is kind of interesting, and it also talks about her struggle with perfectionism, and I feel like I definitely struggle with perfectionism. I'm like, just want everything to be perfect. Anything that I'm working on, even like my videos or when I do photography, I want everything to be perfect, which is just not realistic, and so I really liked how it touched on that. So I really enjoyed the book overall, and it was very short. It was like 180 pages. I gave it 4 stars because I did enjoy it, but it's obviously not one of my favorite books of all time, but I do recommend it if you want just like an easy, light romance. I borrowed it from the library, and I've actually found another one of her books that's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you want to read something else from the same author, she has some books, maybe more than one, on Kindle Unlimited, and I've kind of started one of them. I've been starting multiple books on that, so I'm excited to read it because I just think it's good writing, lighthearted, makes you feel good, that kind of vibe, so I really enjoyed it. And the next one is the only paper copy I have because I loved it so much that I bought it in paperback, and it's If I Were God, I'd End All the Pain by John Dixon. I watched Rachel Catherine's April reading wrap-up, and she talked about this book, and it sounded really good, so I wanted to read it. It says, struggling with evil, suffering, and faith, and it's like so short, like maybe 50 pages, so very tiny, and it's very cheap on Amazon, obviously, because it's so tiny. But I loved this book so much. I feel like the idea of pain and suffering and a loving God is something that's really hard to grasp, and I don't think any of us obviously are ever going to fully grasp it, but I think this book does a good job talking about it. It also talks about other religions and what they say about pain and suffering, and then it goes back to Christianity and what Christianity says about it, and just some of the reasons that pain and suffering happens. I really enjoyed it. Highly suggest. I gave it 5 stars. One of my favorite Christian books. On my review on Goodreads, I put, the idea of pain in this world is very hard to grasp, and I loved how the author talked about it. He used biblical examples and also examples of pain he has gone through to explain the idea of God allowing pain/hardships to happen to people. I highly recommend. So it's kind of like a brief summary, if you were wondering, because I should have just read that because I feel like I was like really long-winded. But anyways, next I read God Bless This Mess by Hannah Brown. If you don't know, she was on The Bachelor, and then she was also The Bachelorette. She was on Dancing with the Stars. And basically it's just a memoir about her life as a child, leading up to her going on The Bachelor, her being The Bachelorette, her going on Dancing with the Stars, some things that's happened in her life, and I really enjoyed it. I did think at moments it was pretty heavy. I thought it was very good. I feel like I teared up at parts because I feel like it was just really deep and just like things that she had learned, and I just really enjoyed it. And I feel like maybe if you've watched her season, you might have judged her in situations, and I honestly can say I probably did when I watched her season. So it's really cool to read how she was feeling and what made her make these decisions and how she's feeling about them, and so I really enjoyed it. Also, it was really fun to read about behind the scenes of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, some insider scoop, and also about her relationship with Tyler, what happened with that, what happened with Peter, what happened with Jed, I forgot his name. That's who she picked on the show. And you just kind of hear about that, what happened, and I really enjoyed reading the behind the scenes. I just think that's fun to read like memoirs like that because you get stories obviously that they haven't said publicly yet. I feel weird rating it because it is a memoir, but I did really enjoy it, and I think you should read it if you like memoirs. I think you would enjoy it. Last but not least, I'm so excited to talk about this book. It's Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Oh my goodness, this is probably my new favorite romance book of all time. It's so good, literally so good. So basically it's about this girl named Percy. It's a like then and now situation. So basically it flashes back to when she was a child, and she had this lake house that she would go to every summer, and she became friends with the guy next door. And it kind of takes you through the 6 summers of them spending time together. His name is Sam, and then it flashes back to 12 years later where they reunite under sad circumstances, and you kind of just see what happens. Obviously there was a reason that they haven't talked in 12 years, and you find out what happens. Obviously it's at the end when you find out what happens. Second chance, like childhood romance. Those are my favorite books to read. I just thought it was so good. So good. It definitely is similar to Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren if you've read that book, but I think this one's way better. It's been so long since I've read that one, but I think this one is so much better. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars and it was literally the best book. One of the best books I've ever read. Definitely my top romance books. I'm honestly wanting to put it at #1 because it's so good. If you've read my top romance books video, you know Before Your Strangers is my favorite book of all time, like romance wise, but this is up there. Honestly, it was so good. It just made you like emotional and just like feel for them, and you just want to know what happens. I devoured it literally in a day and I just loved it so much. It's also Carly Fortune's debut novel, so it's her first novel she's ever written. I'm so excited for her to come out with more books, and I just want to read more second chance romances because they're my favorite. It's something special about when they knew each other as children and reunite years later. That's just great. I highly recommend that book. If you're wanting to read one book out of this whole video, you should read that one because it's so good, and it's obviously good for the summertime because it goes through 6 summers and then 1 weekend of them reuniting. I loved it so much. I'm gonna shut up talking about it. It's just one of those books that you can't put down because you want to know what happens and you're just so invested in the characters. But that is all of the books that I read in May and the one book that I read in April, but I hope you enjoyed. I loved sitting down and talking about books. It's literally my favorite thing ever, and I'm excited to do more book content. I really want to dive into more book related videos and just doing that kind of stuff because I love it so much. So let me know what videos you like to see. I have some ideas, but I'm excited to get to filming them and just kind of brainstorming some more. But if you did enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe. I post all the time, lots of fun stuff around here. You can also follow me on Instagram, my regular Instagram and my book Instagram. But I think that's it for this video, and I'll see you for my next one. Bye.